Spoiler-free review for Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil. Let's go. First and foremost, shout out to Del Rey for sending me a copy of this book. Happy to get it early, happy to jump into it because I love the character of Thrawn. My first dive into the expanded universe was the original Thrawn Trilogy with Heir to the Empire, and man, I was so intrigued by this character. And this book is really interesting because it goes deeply into his backstory, and this entire trilogy is about him rising through the ranks and the Chiss Ascendancy as a whole, and all sorts of like Thrawnness. Thrawn just doing Thrawn things, and it's just fun. Very aware that I'm doing a book review for the last book of a trilogy, so in order to really talk about this, we gotta do some spoiler-free talks about the previous two books. The first one is, so these three books marked the descent of what would become the reason behind Thrawn being exiled and sent out to the galaxy at large, which is where we find him in the first Thrawn book. I really enjoyed the first book in the series, and it's about Thrawn dealing with a big military threat that is outside encroaching on the Chiss Ascendancy. The second book, I did not like as much. Now, full disclosure, I've said it before, I actually had COVID, I was in the hospital, I had 104 fever, and I couldn't breathe while I was reading this book, so my memory didn't quite serve me. But before jumping into this one, I reread the second book, A Greater Good. Still not my favorite. Still a little bit anemic. There was parts that just felt empty, and it didn't feel like a complete book. And I was able to find out why. It's because it wasn't. Now, it did tell a complete story, a complete narrative, but the third book is a lot closer to the second book than the second book is to the first book, if that makes sense. But basically, this is a continuation of the same story, and it's gonna behoove you to probably reread Greater Good before jumping into Lesser Evil, because a lot of the story threads are directly tied, and had I not reread it, I probably would have been lost on quite a few things. That being said, this book does quite a few things really well, and that's the political intrigue that happens in the book. And it's really fascinating to see a society where politics is not supposed to influence the military, and seeing the sneaking ways that it does, this sort of loyalty to other things beyond the collective of Chiss Ascendancy as a whole. You know, we have these people who are more loyal to their families than they are to the Chiss, and we see where that can lead to problems, and that's been a theme throughout all three of these books. But seeing that play out, man, it really it's beautiful. While Thrawn is still very much Thrawn, this book really actually dives into his heart a bit more, and we get to see a little bit more about him in the ways of, he knows that he's bad at politics, and he knows that he's not the best at connecting with other people, but he is so appreciative of it when he can, and we start to see a lot of that in this book. If you're a big Legends fan like I am, and you read Outbound Flight, and you remember Thras, you're gonna like this book. We're gonna get some pieces and nuggets. If, like me, you are an Ar'alani simp, yeah, there's gonna be a lot more of that in this book, and it's gonna make you question some things about yourself, in good ways. Throughout this entire series, we've been seeing a lot of things through the eyes of Cheery, who is just a child who is just getting started with her role as a Skywalker, and still seeing things through her eyes. Her story gets a lot deeper in this book. I would die for Cheery. She is my heart. She's amazing. We also get to spend a lot more time with people who are just against Thrawn, and we just hate these people, like Thurfinn. But their stories get deeper as well, and we dive a lot more into the family structures and the history of those families, and how the history with which something is founded profoundly affects how they view themselves and their actions moving forward. If I were to just give out like a ranking system for this trilogy of books, the first book, Chaos Rising, would be an 8. The second book, Greater Good, would be a 7, and I would give this one an 8.5. Now, it is a big boy. and it's good. You'll like it. If you read the first two, you gotta finish it as well, because Star Wars has been killing it in the third book of all of their trilogies. So dive in, peoples, dive in. As always, like, comment, subscribe. It really does help out. Also, I'll leave an affiliate link if you want to pick up this or any of the other books in the trilogy in the comments. Every little bit helps. I love your guys' support. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and may the Force be with you always.